Hi everyone, hope you're all well and keeping safe. My name is Shmila and on behalf of Scottish Muslim Professional Network, we'd like to welcome you to our second podcast of the year. Time is certainly flying in already, isn't it? For those who are new to Scottish Muslim Professionals, we are a group of Scottish Muslim professionals who aim to develop motivated and goal-oriented professionals in order to prepare for future industry leaders. Now, our first podcast was based on Ramadan in the workplace. And today's podcast is focused on anxiety and mental illness. And I would like to introduce an expert on this topic, Gin Lalli. Gin is a solution-focused psychotherapist based in Edinburgh. She works with people to eliminate anxiety, stress, and depression by helping them to understand how the brain functions. And more importantly, by focusing on solutions going forward rather than unpicking the past. Gin is also happy to connect with yourself via LinkedIn. And if you'd like to hear more about her work, please do tune into her podcast, Stress Bucket Solutions. Gin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Shmila. I'm really looking forward to having a chat with you today.
Yeah, no, I'm exciting stuff. It's also something that became such a major topic. I mean, mental health has become increasingly popular during this pandemic. But the issue was always there. It's just now it seems to be highlighted and has been given more attention and importance during this time. So my main kind of first question was to touch upon is, what advice would you give to those who may be kind of suffering from post-pandemic anxiety, especially with many of us now slowly returning back to work and the office environment?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because for a lot of people, they don't understand this. A lot of people are dead keen to get back to work, back to socializing. But there's actually a huge amount of anxiety around doing that as well. There's a lot of people struggling. For a lot of people, lockdown was a bit of a blessing. So if you've got social anxiety, lockdown was lovely because there were no invitations to turn down. We had to stay in. We didn't have to see anyone. But it's the same coming out of lockdown now. It's going the other way around, isn't it? And this is because the brain doesn't like change. The brain hates change. Even if we know it's good for us, if it sees it coming externally from us, it flags it up as an error. So first of all, understanding that that's what the brain is seeing. It's not liking it. Something's different. Something is changing. We don't like it. So, when people say, oh, I don't like change, I always say, well, no one likes change. No one. Everybody doesn't like change. So that's not good. So understand that.
I'm definitely one of them.
Yeah, everyone. I don't like change. We like things to stay the same because that's our comfort zone. We like that. And it's making us uncomfortable now. Something is going to have to change to come out of lockdown. And a lot of that is based on, we don't as well know how it's going to change. So what are the restrictions going to be when we go to a restaurant or go back to work? What's the office going to look like? So the first thing to do is get information. So if there's people in your workplace that you can talk to, managers, team leaders, they should be communicating this. Look, this is what we're doing. Yeah. We've got hand sanitizers here. We need you to do this. This is going to happen. You need that reassurance. And don't get caught up in the what ifs. So if you're constantly worrying about how it's going to be overcrowded, it's going to be noisy, you won't be able to do that. I mean, that's the definition of anxiety. Yeah. Constantly worrying about what if it goes wrong? What if that happens? What if that happens? 99% of the things we worry about never actually happen.
That's very, very true. Yeah.
We spend a lot of time worrying about them, don't we? So that is what pure anxiety is. So the way around that is get all your information and try not to get caught up in the what ifs. So get some definite information. The other thing is to do what's right for you. So, because if everybody else is going out to, a big restaurant, you don't have to. If you're not comfortable with that just yet, see if you can work out a way that you can do that slowly and gradually in small steps. Yeah. So I was talking to someone the other day about, I want to go back out and be the life and soul of the party. That's going to the other extreme. How about going to a coffee shop a coffee shop you're familiar with two friends for half an hour? So start small. Steps. Yeah, real baby steps to, keep your defenses down a little bit.
But I think, like you said about, different people, some people it was positive for having this pandemic and lockdown, and for some it wasn't. So that goes back to whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. So I feel like a lot of extroverts are really ready to get out there, while the introverts are probably the ones kind of having a little bit more of an anxiety-based issue. But even with that reassurance given for companies, I don't know if for some of them it's just enough. So how could you kind of train and have more positive thoughts?
Well, first of all, you need to get away from the labels of introvert and extrovert. If you call yourself an introvert, your subconscious will look for confirmation that you're an introvert. Oh, yes, you are an introvert.
Yeah.
So
okay. Yep.
get away from the label. You don't have to be an extrovert. It's not as black and white as that. You don't have to be an extrovert to get back out there.
Yeah.
You need to be someone that you need to have a vision of your purpose. So your purpose is, we know now that work provides us with a lot of purpose. Ask anyone in the pandemic who got put on furlough or was made redundant. We used to want, this work-life balance. I always say there's no such thing as work-life balance. It's all called life. All of it is life.
That's an interesting way of putting it. I've always believed the whole work-life balance. I've tried to do that. I don't think it's successful as such, but
there you go. Yeah. It's about your life. Shamila, right? So work, we identify ourselves with work, especially Asians, what is it that you do? Oh, especially if you've got a vocational profession. I'm a doctor, I'm an accountant, I'm a solicitor. It's such a big part of your life.
Yeah.
So have a vision of, that vision is, I need to get back to work.
Yeah.
How am I going to do that? I want to get back to work. I need to get back to work. Now, you don't have to be this extrovert person to do that, but it is going to provide you with purpose. Again, small steps. Going in, could you manage to go in for half a day, a couple of days a week, a couple of days a week at home? Is there some way? And I know a lot of workplaces that are doing that flexible hybrid working.
Yeah. I think that will be the way forward, considering if some companies don't have the capacity to get everybody back in, 50-50 in, out, rotational.
And some people are working really well in that hybrid model of working as well. They're actually getting more done. They're more productive.
And it's suited their like, I know not work-life balance, but in a way it is, but especially when you've got the kids, school runs and activities, etc. It's definitely helped them out. So there's all the pros there for this pandemic. So based on that, like, how people go, anxiety, what would you say is the difference between mental illness and stress?
So stress has got a bit of a bad rap. So I'm all about there's different types of stress. We need some stress in our lives. The brain loves it. It's a challenge. And I call that challenge stress. Right. Now that stress makes sure that we meet deadlines. We're not late for things. We get things done. So in the morning, we're stressed because that's the alarm going off. We must get up. We must do those things. We must get somewhere on time. And I've got a deadline for this project in 2 weeks. That stress is great. It drives us. Otherwise, we won't get anything done. So stress can be good. That's called challenge stress. I call that challenge stress.
Yeah.
Now, the problem occurs is when that tips over into something called threat stress. We start to feel threatened. So this is when we've got so much stress coming up us from lots of different angles. We are now starting to feel really anxious about this. And anxiety as well, to define that, it's very normal to feel a little bit nervous about an exam or a presentation. That's not anxiety. That's nerves. And you've got those nerves. Again, you could use them to drive you. You have those nerves because you want to do well. It'll make sure that you prepare well. It'll make sure that you get there on time. It'll make sure you get the job done. Again, it's a good challenge. Anxiety is when those things feel so debilitating that you can't do anything. It takes over the rest of your life. It starts to affect the things that you enjoy or you should be enjoying. It starts to affect your family. It starts to affect your health. That's anxiety. So not all stress is bad for you. Some stress is good for us and we need it. Otherwise we'd be horizontal. So we need a bit of stress. But anxiety can be absolutely debilitating, a constant fear and worry about what is going to happen. And your imagination starts to run wild with it. So much so, it takes over your whole life.
Yeah. I mean, the way you put it, I'm actually just even listening to you there, you've kind of completely differentiated both of them. I know sometimes I work harder when I'm under some stress, but then it means that I've actually ticked off a lot of things on my to-do list. But with luckily anxiety, that could be kept at bay so for now. But that definitely gives a better definition of what people sometimes go around saying, oh, I'm so stressed I can't work, but it's like, no, you're stressed but you can work. So
yeah. I help people who are at that stage where they're so stressed they can't do anything, not just work. They're not looking after the family, they're not looking after themselves. So that's a generalized anxiety disorder. Right. So like I said, stress has got a bad rap. If we start saying, oh, I'm so stressed, I can't work, I'm feeling anxious, we need to get a little bit more objective and rational about this. That anxiety and stress are feelings, but they are feelings. Either you can be in control of them, so when you are stressed and in control, that's good. But when you are so stressed you feel you've lost control and you are out of control, that's bad.
Yeah.
It's a fine line between the two of them, though.
So in regards to this, I feel like in general, workplace, no workplace, females tend to be better at recognizing when something's not right, recognizing the difference maybe between the stress element and the anxiety element. And at some point, we'll always reach out for help or support. And there is a lot of help and support available, touch wood, for the that kind of, I'm saying gender, because I feel men, however, they just don't, either they find it difficult or it just seems to be a different topic of conversation for men, either being in workplace or life in general. I mean, what advice could you provide for male individuals who aren't reaching out for help or just aren't even helping themselves when it comes to anxiety and mental illness?
For men, I would say don't make it a bigger subject than it is. It doesn't have to be. So when we, like your example there, so women talk, we like to talk. Okay, we love to talk about stuff. We will spend time talking about stuff. So men have this impression, oh no, if I want to talk about this, I'm going to have to spend an hour, like my missus does, talking to her friends about it. It doesn't have to be that way. There are lots of different types of therapies. There are lots of different ways to talk. So by talking about mental health, what you're doing is you're talking about, you're going to, this is for men, if you're going to a regular sporting place where you meet your friends or your regular cafe or the pub, is talking about, oh yeah, I'm having a bit of a hard time this week. I'm really struggling with this, that, and the other. It's again, making it an objective conversation. What do you do when you struggle? What do you do when you're getting really stressed? I feel like everything's getting on top of me right now. I've got the kids to look after and I've got, you've got the same problems there as women, but it's making that conversation much more accessible. So you can talk about it with friends and things. Now, the other thing is when I said about getting help, there's lots of different types of help. So this is where I'm a bit of a mission to explain what therapy is. There are different types of therapy. You can have counseling where you will talk about your feelings more and you will talk about the problems more. That's not suitable for everyone. And I would say that isn't what I would like to do. There are other therapies which are a bit more logical about moving forward, and coaching as well. Coaching is a great example of that, being coached to move forward. And so what I will say is that men do talk about their mental health, but they want solutions more. Right. And I tend to find that's a bit like me. I'm a logically minded woman. I want solutions more. So I need to know what I need to do to get better. I don't want to sit and ruminate in my feelings. Yeah. I want to move on from it. And there's an impression in therapy that, you are going to sit and ruminate with those feelings and you are going to have to go back to, dealing with issues of your childhood or teenage years. And oh God, come on, whose teenage years weren't awful? Like mine were, no one wants to go back there, right? But, there is a place for that. I will say, so I'm not knocking other therapies. There is a place for that. If you feel you need to do that, do that. But there are other solutions. There are other ways around it. And any therapist, any counselor, any coach would be happy to talk to you about their methods. So it's about finding something that works for you and giving it a different label. So a lot of my clients will say, I think you're a bit of a coach, Gin. I'm like, you can call me what you want as long as you come for sessions and we'll keep getting you feeling better. Yeah. So coach, therapist, psychotherapist, counselor, whatever you want to call it, find a modality that fits with you and your personality. But there are many types out there. And it's just, we need to open up the conversation, but I think men want it in a more logical, scientific and forward-looking way. Yeah. That's the only difference.
I guess the first step will be for them to recognise that it's okay to go out and reach for help or some format. You don't need to advertise it, but it's okay to talk about it. Because more than likely, if there's two of you that probably are suffering from some form of anxiety related issues, right? But to keep it hush.
It's going back to the definition of stress and anxiety, isn't it? That actually, men as well, brought up to really cope with stress. You should manage everything.
Yeah.
But then if it's tipping over into anxiety and it's getting a bit debilitating and it's maybe even affecting your general health, you should really look at doing something about it.
Yeah.
As well.
But then this kind of goes to a question that I had in my head in regards to us being in the Asian culture. And from day one, if you're stressed, if you're having a bad day, if you're just feeling sad, we've always been told from our elder generations, oh, you're fine, just go and pray. And yes, praying is great. And we all obviously have different faiths, etc. And our connection to our faith will all be very different. But sometimes it's not always the answer, is it? But it's how do we then kind of go back to, you say the older generation think it's not just praying that I need, I also need something else, as well as like either do both or whatever. And it is like that stigma as well attached to the Asian cultures. No matter what background you're from, there's definitely is a stigma. How can we overcome that, or what would be the best way? Maybe educate the generation, or should we just not bother, just try and focus on what needs to be done for ourselves?
I think it depends who you're talking to. So you'll know the personality of the elder you're talking to, whether you can talk to them or not and explain to them. So that might be on an individual basis. But what I always say to people is, why not both? So if praying isn't enough, you just said it there as well. So what can I do? I need something else. Praying isn't working. And actually, it's a bit of a vicious circle. If you've got a lot of anxiety and stress, you feel you can't pray, you can't focus. Until you deal with the anxiety and stress, you might feel actually a bit disconnected from prayer and your faith. And actually, I've just been having that conversation with a client this morning.
All right.
Who says now, very current issue.
A topic here,
Yeah. Their anxiety, they saw me for anxiety and stress. And one of the things that was then doubly stressing them was like, I'm just really not getting the enjoyment out of my faith that I used to. I'm not finding any connection in prayer. I'm really questioning my faith as well. And I'm really confused. Now, so they've tried the prayer route. So they know how to pray. That isn't the issue, but it wasn't giving them the answers. After a few sessions with me, they're like, I brought the anxiety down and the stress down. And they said to me this morning, I've reconnected with prayer.
Yeah.
So because the anxiety has come down, they're like, my mind is more open now and more relaxed. And I feel I can pray again.
Yeah.
So why not both? And that's where we would say to an elder, yes, I've tried that. I need something else. I'm not rejecting prayer and I'm not rejecting my faith, but I need something more. Yeah. So this is the difference between if you had a cold or a flu. So if you had a cold, you could do a little bit, but if you had the flu, just taking hot lemon might not work. You need maybe a little bit, you need a bit more medication. That doesn't mean you'll stop the hot lemon drinks. You'll still do that because it's still beneficial. But actually, once you feel better, you will enjoy the other stuff as well. So I think we should look at these two things going alongside each other, because what we're trying to do when we reduce stress is getting people back in tune with their own identity. And their own identity comes often from faith as well. So if you're starting to lose touch with faith, that's really quite normal. When our anxiety and stress is high, we start to get a little bit numb to those other external feelings. And in particular, in depression, we get very numb to other feelings. We just feel constantly sad all the time and we can't find joy anywhere. And this is where our elders are saying, you will find your joy again through prayer. But if you cannot even motivate yourself to pray again, how is that going to help?
But then that adds on to further depression, anxiety, because you're like, well, why am I not connecting? If this is what my parents are saying or grandparents saying, why am I doing something wrong? Yes. And then that becomes a really vicious cycle as well, doesn't it? To kind of get
it's a downward spiral, isn't it? So that's where you need to break that cycle somewhere. So I know a lot of people who have a lot of faith and that works for them and that's great. Yeah. Why not try something else? And by trying something else, you're not disconnecting from your faith. So it's very important for any therapist to allow that space for faith in the sessions and open that up. And that's where often I will see people of color as well, because I understand their faith as well. So, it's not something else that they have to explain as well. So very, very important. I think we can do both. Why can't you do both? They should go alongside each other.
So in regards to obviously doing both, prayers, reaching out for some form of help or therapy, also just talking with somebody that you trust, whether that be a therapist or just even a friend, etc. What other suggestions or advice could you give to people who, just to give them that peace of mind, body and soul going forward, especially with now coming to another journey of this pandemic? Well, hopefully coming to a close of this pandemic, but it's a new chapter overall, isn't it, for lifestyle?
Yeah. It's evolution, isn't it? And if we go back to the beginning of time, when we lived as cave people, we lived in our tribe properly. Yeah, we lived in our tribe properly when we did our hunting and gathering properly.
Yeah,
when we socialized properly, when we looked after each other. So it's going back to basics, Shamila. It really is. Now, what we know from science is when we lived like that in a tribe, our serotonin flowed really well. We got a biological reward. We felt good. And because we felt good, we wanted to do more of those things. Mm-hmm. And what we know now, that biological reward is something called a flow of serotonin, which is often known as the happy hormone. But it's a neurotransmitter that helps us feel good. And it not only makes us feel happy, actually, it makes us feel brave. It makes us feel we can cope, we can manage, we can deal with pain, and it boosts our immune system. So it does loads for us. So what I talk about is something called the 3 Ps, because we can't live in a tribe like we used to. We can't go out and club a woolly mammoth over the head now. But do the 3 Ps. The first P, positive activity. Right. Find activities that you find positive. So exercise is your biggest one, but it might just be walking, moving, a hobby, doing a jigsaw, something that you like doing. Always do that. And make sure it's positive for you. I always laugh and say, look, my best friend loves running. And she's always telling me to come for a run with her. I'm like, that is not my positive activity. That just fills me with dread and horror. I'm not going to do it. I'd much prefer doing yoga. That's me. So do an activity that you find is positive for you. The second P is positive interactions. Mm-hmm. We are social beings. We need to be around people where we feel positive, having positive conversations, being around people where we feel good as well. And it only needs to be 1 or 2 people. We're not saying loads of people, just 1 or 2 people.
Yeah.
And the third P, which is the most difficult, is positive thinking. That's the hardest. And I'm not a fan of that phrase, to be very honest with you, because it's just so flippant and it's just saying, oh yeah, just think positive. You need to do that, but it doesn't come easy. And that's where it's about things like gratitude journals help, being thankful for what's happened. This is where our elders are saying prayer will help because you're showing gratitude for something as well. Mm-hmm. But that's the hardest, and that's where I help. However, if you do the first 2 Ps, the third P will come. If you do loads of positive activities and positive interactions, you're going to start thinking positively. Yeah. You're going to start looking forward to things and doing those things and having more positive memories of things you've done rather than focusing on the negative.
Yeah.
So it's really important, and it's an evolutionary response to keep it simple. Mm-hmm. The one other thing I talk a lot about is sleep.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of sleep. Sleep is free therapy. You struggle with it, Shava. You're saying you struggle with it, but
I don't seem to switch off at night that quick, and I wish I did. And I think a lot of people are probably in the same position. Like, you go to bed thinking 10 o'clock when I'm getting a really early night, lying there and it's like 12. It's like, why am I not sleeping? It's just that trying to switch off. It's very difficult. That's my personal thing. And a lot of my friends do the same. And what are you doing? And you're like, what are you doing? I think I don't know.
Yeah. So it's about switching down. I think if you think of switching off, again, you're going to another extreme. That's really hard. And if you were switching off, you'd be dead. So let's say we're not switching off. We're switching down. Sleep is really powerful. Yeah. And I always remind people that when you were born, no one taught you how to sleep. You did it a lot as a baby. Okay.
Sleep was one of them. Like that's sleep, like the best time in your life. Sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. So you know how to sleep. What you've done is you've taught yourself how not to sleep. And so social media, technology, staying up late, getting into a habit of just, oh God, who's on their mobile phone in bed? Right. Take your phone out of the bedroom straight away. Yep. Take it out. And it's going to feel uncomfortable the first few nights because you've got into a habit, but get rid of the phone. Watch your caffeine intake. Yeah. So caffeine has a huge impact on your sleep. What we've done is, as a society, we've taught ourselves how not to sleep.
Okay.
Because there's too many exciting things to stay up for, like Netflix and video games, right? So we know how not to sleep, but sleep is free therapy. And it really does help reduce anxiety. And I strongly believe that our current mental health epidemic is because we don't get enough sleep. And if everybody got half an hour to an hour's more sleep, we would notice a huge difference.
Okay.
Yeah. So my reference points for that, if you don't believe me that sleep is so powerful, I want you to watch a TED Talk by Matthew Walker.
Okay.
Called Sleep is Your Superpower. Just Google it. Sleep is Your Superpower, Matthew Walker. And you will definitely start sleeping after you watch that. Or you will prioritize sleep. You will start to prioritize sleep. Yeah. So it's got to be prioritized. So my sleep is non-negotiable. As well. And there are times I totally understand that feeling of going to bed and your mind is racing. It's racing for a reason, because you haven't wound it down enough before you've gone to sleep. And you've not got into a routine, and that routine takes time to develop. But if anyone says they can't sleep, I'll say you can sleep. You must be sleeping, because you would not be functioning if you didn't sleep at all. If you want to sleep more, you need to start prioritizing it, just like we prioritize any other parts of our health, where we start to look at everything around that. But sleep is free therapy. Everyone should be doing it.
No, agree, definitely. But I think that kind of then aligns with your 3 Ps as well. Like if you are doing activities, if you are, having interaction, hopefully that then makes you a bit more tired physically. And then it's just about slowing down the mind at night so that both of them is in line, and that's you kind of switch off. So a little bit hand in hand there, isn't it? Yeah.
2 things are going on at night in your sleep. Your body is recovering physically, and your mind is recovering mentally. So you need to have good phases of deep sleep and REM sleep. There's cycles of deep sleep and REM sleep. And in the first cycle is actually deep sleep. So actually it's more important to get yourself physically tired. If you're physically tired, you'll fall asleep. So if you can't wind down your mind, you've got to learn how to tire out your body physically, and then you will sleep. Otherwise your mind will keep you awake. So start tackling it from a physical point of view. That would probably be the first easy step.
Just not too much. There's been times where I've been to the gym where I'm really sore, where the pain hasn't let me go to sleep. So
don't overdo it.
That didn't work out well for me that day. But oh, that's great. Just obviously cautious of time, Gin. But the last question would be, as a society, what can we do to support each other, regardless whether that's going to be in the workplace, outside work? Just bearing in mind there will be other people out there, and suppose it's just that whole thing that's recently going on is be kind, isn't it? Would you say that's the main thing? Just watch out. You just don't know what anybody is going through at any one time.
We're all really good at putting on a good impression, aren't we? And we're all, Asian community, very image conscious, aren't we? It's ingrained in us. So we've got to put on a good front, right? So it's about trying to pick up the signs. There's lots of non-verbal cues as well you can look out for. If someone's worried, you get a gut feeling, right? Someone's worried, someone's anxious. They might keep turning down invitations. They might be a little bit nervous and quiet in a social situation. And it's not asking them once if they're okay, it's asking them twice. Because on the first answer, they'll give you, I'm fine. I'm just saying, you're really okay. Yeah. And just, maybe taking them to one side and doing it privately. It's not the kind of thing you would do in a big group as well, or bring attention to. And it's also talking about our own anxieties. So, I can easily be a very anxious person. I just know how not to do it. So I can, like some of the things you spoke about, I said, oh yeah, I've been there, Shamaila. I've said that to you, that I've been there. So you've already got that impression from me that I understand. And I do, because I know what it's like to go to bed with a racing mind. I know what it's like to be stressed. If anyone says they've never felt stress, they're lying. Everybody's felt stress. It's how we cope with it that counts. And if we choose to ruminate in it, or do we choose to come out of it? So look out for non-verbal cues. You don't need the verbal cues. Keep checking in with each other. And I think that's where, the Asian community, we still have got that community feel. We're good at that. That's one thing we're good at with the community, but it's really, not just doing the surface asking you're okay. It's really sitting one-to-one with, or one-to-two with a few people and saying, oh, are you really okay? How are you coping? How are you managing? This is what I've been going through. What have you been going through? And just opening up the conversation. That's being kind. Being kind isn't, about bending over backwards or, keep checking in on someone. It's really honestly opening up the conversation when you can, and being observant of each other as well, noticing when someone might be struggling and just being there for them. That's all they need.
Yeah. No, that's great advice, and thank you so much, Gin, for taking your time out and coming on board for this session. It's been very insightful, and I will certainly be taking some points on board and introducing it to my lifestyle as well, especially the sleep thing.
Great. Keep me posted on that one then.
I will, and I will also be having a listen to your podcast.
Great.
So thank you everybody for tuning in and listening. Please do provide us feedback regarding this podcast. We would love to hear further suggestions on topics that are of interest, which we can take forward and discuss. And so please feel free to drop a comment below. And Gin, again, thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.